While the printouts are being passed out, let's go ahead and do our vision statement. And then our church Bible verse, 115th Psalms, verse 1. And then last, our core values. Okay, good evening, everyone, and how grateful we are that God has again blessed us to be present in this place. How many of you remember that old song, "Must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free?" No, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me. Well, for my presentation tonight, that's the theme that I want to use, song I want to use as a theme for what we are presenting tonight. Must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free? No, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me. It's a commitment. It's an acknowledgement of commitment. It is grateful, gratitude, grateful for what God has done, for what Jesus has done, but then commitment for what I will do. I will carry, I will carry a cross. How many are willing to carry a cross? Well, you know, to talk cross and not be willing is kind of an impossible task, because the cross can present so much that if there is not the willingness before it, you'll back off. You'll let it go. You'll wait for another time. In other words, you won't carry your cross. Because a cross is not meant to be easy. It's a challenge. But we'll do a little bit more with that song a little later on. In the 1 Peter, first chapter, the 20th verse, he was ordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you. And another way of saying that is, God chose Jesus as your ransom long before the world began. And that's important for me tonight, because last week, Pastor Gill talked to us about the cross. What did it mean to you? What was its symbolism for you? But I want to talk about the journey. Because the journey for me, as you know, for these many years, is what's important. The journey is what I am required to travel, because I have life. How I travel it is up to me. But as long as I have life, I am required to travel the journey. Because the journey is not something that we framed. It's not something that we put into place. The journey is something that God put into place for all of his creation. And with his human creation, he labels it, or we calls it, or we look at it as a journey. A definition for journey for me is, in the biblical days, it was the travel of a day, a day's journey. You've heard that mentioned many times, a day's journey. Jerusalem was a day's journey from Jericho, for example. I'm not saying that's exact, but that was used often in the Bible, a day's journey. It was also an act of traveling from one place to another. He journeyed from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves and was beaten and robbed and left half dead. A journey from one place to another. But the one I want you to zero in on is this last one. A long and often difficult process of personal change and development. A long and often difficult journey process of personal change and development. Your journey is a long and often difficult process of personal change and development. And you've got to understand that as I stand in the presence of this journey, I've got to be willing to change, and I've got to be willing to develop, and I've got to expect difficult times. The devil does not wish that our journey be peaches and cream. He makes it difficult. He hopes that the more difficult he makes it, the more we will displease God. If he makes it too hard, he hopes that we will quit God. Now, don't be mad at the devil, because he's just doing his job. He was given permission to tempt us, to try us. And he is very good at that. He don't sleep. He don't take a vacation. He is 24/7 in our face, trying to cause us to be displeasing to God in this journey of life that we all must travel. You can't stand to the side. You are a part of this journey. It's personal. I cannot walk Burial's journey for him. Sometimes I wish I could walk it for my children and my grandchildren. I change a whole lot of stuff in their journey. But they have to walk their journey for themselves. You have to walk your journey for yourself. It's personal. Nobody can do it for you. And I wish we would understand that the journey is set. Would you believe, or will you trust me, that everything that happens in your journey, God already knows about? Nothing happens in your journey that God does not already know about. It is a surprise to us. It is new to us. But to God, it is not. Why? Because if God is going to be our present help, if he's never going to leave us nor forsake us, he has to provide the provisions we need for our journey. I go as far as to say, God cannot hold me responsible for my journey if he does not assist me in my journey. Why? Because I'm listening to Paul says, we are no comparison to evil. We fight not against flesh and blood. The powers that we fight against are too great for us. And if it were not for Christ in our lives, we would be totally overcome, totally undone, because we are no match for it. But God has provided provision for us in our journey to help us navigate and resist all the temptations that the devil could present to us. And also those trials that God brings to us. Everything that comes to you that's not to your liking ain't from the devil. Sometimes God lets something come to you that you just say, Lord, what in the world are you doing? What you got up? What's in your head? I don't need this. But God says, I sent it your way because you're getting ready for something over here that you're going to need this for in order to handle that. And if you don't get this here, you won't handle that over there. So I've sent something to make you strong. I've sent something to make you think. I've sent something to get your attention so that when you get over there, you will not be overcome. It's set. I wish that I could go and plan my life. I wish I could go back some years, because this I'm in now, I sure wouldn't be up in it. If I could have set my life from the beginning of my life, man, I wouldn't be on this machine or nothing else. My life would have been peaches and cream, easy. Everything would have happened to my liking. But that's not life. That's not how God does things. And isn't it interesting? That which you thought was going to be good for you, God does not even give it to you. He gives you that which you would not have chose. You would not have chosen what God brings to you. I may be wrong. You might have chosen yours. But most often what God brings is to fit us, to suit us for this salvation that's down the road. Because that's where God's mind is. His mind is not on what's happening with us today other than assisting us in that. But his mind is on where will we end up. So it's personal. We need to leave what God has put in our lives alone. Because the more you mess with it, the more you try to change it, the further behind you get in the process of where God is taking you. That's why it takes some of us so long to arrive at a place. Because we won't walk the journey that God has given us. We keep wanting to change things, or we try to change things, and then we understand we can't change things. They're going to happen anyway. And all that's happened is, hey, we're behind. Now we got to catch up. But a journey is a long and often difficult process of personal change and development. And this is why I want to deal tonight with journey. Because God's divine plan for man's redemption is a journey. The cross was in the mind of God before the foundation of the world. And that's what that 1 Peter scripture told us. God had the cross. Now remember something. The cross at first was not used by Christians. It was a means for punishing those who were not in the best eye of society. Criminals, crooks, deadbeats. And they were punished by crucifixion on a cross. The cross was degrading. It was shameful. You are hanging in front of a crowd all day long, people passing by, and they know the reason you're on the cross is because you're a lowlife. Ain't no good in you. It was shameful. And these officials, now I'm not going to talk about the Roman official, but the Gentile, even the Jews, put Christ on this shameful cross to humiliate him. But God had a different thing in mind about the cross. He took what man used to degrade a person, to shame a person and made it the core of our salvation. I'm saying, even before the foundation of the world, God knew that he was going to take the cross. Now, you know what that means? God knew that we were going to mess up. He knew that there was going to be a garden. He knew that there was going to be a temptation. He knew that there was going to be a yielding to that temptation. He knew that there was going to be a falling into sin. He knew that there was going to be a kicking out of the garden. So he put things in place so that he could bring us back to him. Otherwise, we would never get back to him. I argue that the reason he threw us out of the garden, threw man out of the garden, the reason he didn't want him to eat of that tree of life, because he didn't want forever to be in shame and dishonor. Because if you eat of the tree of life, you live forever. Is that correct? But you live forever in what? Shame. Because your sin put you in shame. And God loved us too much to let that happen, so he kicked us out. At least you eat of the tree of life and live forever. Get out. So God had in mind before any of this that we understand the cross and what he was going to use the cross for. In that next slide, the plan for Jesus' suffering and death on the cross is rooted in the belief that God's plan for salvation was established before the foundation of the world. Acts 4:27-28. And you have probably already read it for yourself. But this is a prayer the disciples are praying. Peter and John have been set free. And look what they're saying, and this is to God. For truly against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, with the Gentiles and the people of Israel, were gathered together to do whatever your hand and your purpose determined before to be done. This is their prayer. You, before Jesus was even mentioned for a cross, subject to a cross, you ordained, you anointed Herod, Pontius Pilate, officials, Jews, to put Christ on that cross, because that was your plan, that was your purpose, that was your way of getting men back to you. That was your way of getting them back to salvation. You did that. And they said, and we thank you for it. Now, this is after the resurrection. This is after, the church is about to get started. And so these disciples pray this prayer. God's purpose, his journey, his plan for salvation, a journey. I'm going to start us with Lucifer, Satan. Isn't it interesting that every depiction you see of Lucifer, he's ugly, red suit, ugly face? That ain't Lucifer, y'all. Ain't the Satan that the Bible talks about. He was beautiful. And we don't use the term men as beautiful, but he was beautiful. And he got so impressed with how beautiful he was, how intelligent he was, how powerful he was, the position that he had, and he began to desire what was for God and God alone. Now, let's not get mad at him or talk about him, because too many of us are found right here. God has blessed us in a way that you can only help but give thanks for. You got an awesome voice. You can sing, you can preach, you can stand before men and talk. You got a great mind. You can think on your feet. Somebody throw some numbers at you before they have finished. You already got the answer. You are just tremendously blessed. And instead of taking that blessing for the purpose for which God gave it to you, we take it for our own personal benefit. And trust, no matter who you are or what your position is, God will never let you misuse what he has so blessed you with. You may get away for a moment, but he's going to call you into check. And when he calls you into check, sometimes he takes away from you that which he gave you. But he will all time discipline you and hope that you go back to where you're supposed to be. But if not, depart from me, I know thee not. So pride got Lucifer. Some writers, and when you get home, Job does a really good job for explanation of Lucifer. And I don't know, I may have that in here someplace. I don't know. Yeah, Job 38 is on that next slide. But some say that he was, is this right, Tara, head of the chorus? I mean, he had a beautiful voice. That when he would lead out in song, all of heaven rejoiced, even God himself. But he was not singing unto God, he was singing unto himself. And we get caught up in that. Preachers who don't see, preachers is nothing more than a medium through which God speaks. If you go beyond that, you have ceased to be a preacher. Because you're nothing but God's voice. You can only say what God tells you to say. I don't care how you study, how you work hard to create your plan, your sermon, your deliverance, and all of that. You are there for God to speak through. Back in the day, I don't know if Rosette remember this, but the preachers got mad at me. Because I told them, I was trying to impress upon them, you are a medium through which God is speaking, so you need to leave God alone and let him speak through you. So that means that you have to be completely out of self. Completely out of self. You don't have time to entertain anything of self while God is speaking. Now, I know that's hard. Because sometimes the word hits us. And sometimes we want to stop and cry for a moment. But God has to hush. You all mad like they were mad? But when I'm there God using me as a medium through which he wants to speak, I have to leave it alone until God gets through speaking. Then I can hoop, cry, shout, jump, whatever I want to do. Because God is through. You see, I told the preachers, you should have been shouting when God was giving you the sermon. That's when you should have been shouting. If the sermon don't convict you before you get to the pulpit, there ain't no sermon. You should have already been beat up before you got to the pulpit. But sometimes we're so anxious to make sure that we preach well, or we please the people, or they say how great we can preach. We don't care nothing about the conviction of the sermon to us. We're just interested in what do the people think about y'all. Man, he sure did preach. But what did you say about God, or what did God say through you to the people? So Satan, pride caused him to fall. He desired to be God, not to be a servant of God. And that's the conviction for too many of us. Desire to be God and not a servant of God. We know that the angel was created before the earth, and that's at Job 38. Satan fell before he tempted Adam and Eve in the garden. And Jesus in Luke says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Christ was in heaven. He was there until he voluntarily came to earth for our salvation. He was a part of, he saw Satan act the fool. He saw, now he's a part of the Father now, the Trinity. He saw the Father throw him out of heaven. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Now this is a journey I'm talking about, salvation, a journey. And then here come Adam and Eve. God put them in a garden. Perfection all around them. They had no need for anything. Eat, drink, be happy, multiply, have dominion over, and the world is yours. But what does Satan come and do? Now, he's already fallen. He's already tried to be like God, but what does he tempt Eve with? God knows. The day you eat of the tree, you will become like gods. And look how impressive that was to Eve. And I'm including Adam because he's standing there with her. Why do we want to be like God? Why do we not stay in our place? Why do we want to be the kingpin of everything? The best of everything? I used to tell my basketball players, you might have the record today, but somebody tomorrow is going to come and break your record. You might have the most points tonight, but somebody will come later and score more points than you scored. That's life. Nobody has dominion over any of this. And we have to understand that whatever we were able to do, it was simply a gift from God. But the moment that you eat of it, you will become like God. Then the Bible said, when Eve looked upon the tree and saw that it was good to look upon and desirable, here we go with our eyes and our mind that gets us in all kind of trouble. It looked good and was desirable. And that was enough for her because she ate of the tree and gave to her husband there with her, and he ate also. And God says, where are you? We're naked, so we hid. The punishment comes. They're put out of the garden. But God has not forgotten man, because this is a journey. They're on a journey. So for God to kill them would rob them of that salvation. But now they have to go through some things in order to get to that salvation. And that next slide, man's sins become a revolving door. Past Adam and Eve now. Man would sin. God would punish him. Man would cry out. God would hear his cry. God would send relief. And man would be restored. And man would live good for a moment. And immediately after that moment, he sins again. It was a revolving door. It was custom that if I sinned or if I did something displeasing to God, I offer a sacrifice to God. My professor said, but when man started offering those sacrifices and realized he was giving the best, the first fruit, the first animal, giving the best that he had, he started saying, well, wait a minute now. God shouldn't mind me giving this calf over here, this lamb over here. He's not as pretty or fat, or he may have some blemishes on him, but, God ought to be all right with that. And my professor said, then God stopped accepting from the hands of man sacrifices. So the way that man gets back to God is through blood, that sacrifice. We have contaminated the blood of the animals through our selfishness. So the only pure blood is his son. And my Sunday school teacher years ago said, God said, who will go for us? And Jesus said, I will go. So Jesus comes and he pays the price for man's sin. Now, the Bible is full of journeys. Abraham, a journey, leave your father's land and go to a place that you know not of. The exile returned back, to Babylon, returning from Babylon, the return to Jerusalem. Paul, missionary journeys. He had a bunch of missionary journeys. But the journey that's most important is my faith journey. Somebody want to explain to me what that means? My faith journey. Anybody? I can't hear you. Okay. Good. Anyone else? Go ahead. Okay, and that's good. Trusting God enough to walk in that faith, that journey. Anyone else? Okay, say it again.
Oh. Okay. I said as you start on the journey, your faith grows when you learn to use it. And although it might not be easy, it's more a comfort to you because you know and you remember what he's done before.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. Nobody can do it for you. Okay. Anyone else?
It's personal.
Personal. Yes. My faith journey. Now, I underline the word faith because my journey is impossible if it is not accompanied by the faith that I have. Because the faith is going to ensure my trust. The faith is going to ensure my obedience. The faith is going to ensure my determination. I have faith. How many of us have faith that you can make this journey? Or how many of us are questioning, are we going to make it? Am I going to make this? How many of us say, I'm going to make this? Yes. Someone want to, I can't see, I can't breathe, I can't hear.
Sharing
Sharing.
helps others to grow also their faith, but it is personal. It's what you've been through that you can actually be a witness to somebody else. That's why you hear a lot of people saying, you know, why we go to church. It's all about the sharing and the growth that you gain from other believers.
Okay, very good. My faith journey. Look at that next slide. Go ahead. Okay.
Let me say this. Faith is a behavior. If you get faith and make it a behavior, you can go about every single day and help somebody else, because it's not about me. It's me making you the best that you can be.
Okay, good. Yeah, faith creates or determines that drive to be obedient and such. Okay, look at that next slide. And I think this is what we too often miss about our journey. Our journey focuses on the process and not our arrival. We turn our attention to the arrival. I want to get to this place, understanding that no one other than Jesus Christ arrived or did everything that he had been purposed to do. It's a process. And when we focus on the process, that means things happen, things are good, things are bad, things are up, things are down, but I don't become discouraged because it's a process. And it is my faith that helps me stay in the process so that God can take me to the end, which we probably don't understand anyway, because it's so far. Because look at that second bullet. Christians are being transformed into Christ's image from one degree of glory to another. And you can read that when you get home, because I'm looking at the clock and look like we over our time, but anyway. Into Christ's image. I had to realize, you know how long it's going to take Kenea's Potter to be like Christ? I'll spend the whole of my life trying to be like him. But that's the process. That's what we are required. Stay in the process. Don't worry about the end result. Don't worry about arriving. Just stay in the process. It is a process that continues throughout our earthly life. On earth, we never arrive, but we continuously grow closer to who we were created to be. Isn't that good of God? That he's okay with our growing? That he will allow us, through his mercy, these mistakes, these ups and downs. Who of us require of our 5-year-old what we require of our 16-year-old? Who of us require of our 16-year-old what we require of ourselves? They're growing. And we don't grow all at the same pace. For some of us, it took longer to get to a place. And remember, that place is not your stopping place. That place is just a place in the road. Daddy told me, as much as I loved that the work I did, it wasn't so much the altar, it was the work I was doing. I love computer programming. I love designing systems. I love that because every day was different. I love debugging programs. Every day was different. And as much as I love that, Daddy said to me, and it hurt me too. Daddy said, that oil company ain't nothing but a stop in the road for a moment to where God is taking you. And I got upset with that because I thought it was the will of God that I got there in the first place. I had never seen a computer, y'all. But as soon as I got there, that man sat and talked with me about basketball. It was during the Final Four. He sat there and talked to me about basketball for over an hour. Never mentioned the job, never mentioned the work. And then told me, be patient with me, I'll get the job for you. And as soon as I hit there, an employee, I started going through all these schools, all these classes, getting out on the floor hands-on. I loved that work, but it was just a stop. And I realized after I had come to Antioch as a pastor that the things I learned at that oil company were beneficial for me here. One part of my job was to document, to write job descriptions. That was a part of my work. So it helped me here. So you've got to be comfortable in the process and not look for the arrival. When we talk about faith as a journey, we're emphasizing progress, not perfection. And that is important for us to not only grasp ourselves, but share with others. We're more looking at how we are growing instead of how perfect we are. A journey implies changes, transition, challenges, and adventures. God cannot give us the whole of the purpose he has for our lives in one moment. He eventually gives us a little at a time until we get to the place where he wants us to be. Daddy in a sermon said there were some soldiers who had been out at sea for several months, had no contact with home. But on the way home, they got within sight of the shores of America. And they got so excited with that, they began to neglect their duty, and the ship was not continuing to the shore. And he said, what God does is, he don't want us to become excited about heaven and become no good for earth. Changes, transition, challenges, and adventures. God may have you in this place today and another place tomorrow because you are growing. And this is so mind-boggling because sometimes that which we thought we needed in the process that would help us continue, God takes away from us. The job, the spouse, the whatever, he takes away from us. We said, but Lord, that was good for me. That was helping me. But God says, but you know what? In this process, transitions, challenges, and adventures. So what does God expect? He expects us to be open to travel companions. It's a personal journey, as Tony and Kim said, but you don't have to walk it alone. God has somebody in your life that he will let walk with you where you don't have to walk it by yourself. Now, I know he's there, But he also put that tangible something that we can touch, we can see, in order to walk with us. One of the things that I've always understood, don't tear down the bridge between you and anybody. Because you don't know, you might need that bridge to get to where you're going. Don't cut somebody off. Don't talk about that somebody. You might need that somebody to get to where you are going. I'm opening to lightening my load. Why do we live in such a complicated way? Life is simple. Life, well, you may not agree. You think life is simple? Life is so confusing. Life is so hard. Life is so complicated. Life is simple. You all buy that? You all let me get away with that? You get up. You do the best that you can do. You go to bed. You get you some rest so that you can get up and do the best that you can do. Why confuse that? Why make that complicated? To where you don't want to even get up the next day? You're going to get up. You're going to do the best you can do. You're going to go to bed and get some rest and repeat the process all over again. Simple. I'm open to letting go of unnecessary possessions. Things that do not lend to my purpose in life, I need to let them go. We're holding on to some things that ain't got nothing to do with our purpose, ain't helping us in our purpose. They just riding along, they just extra weight, they weighing us down. Need to let them go. I'm open to letting go of anger and bitterness about someone or something. But the biggest and most significant journey in the Bible is Jesus leaving heaven and coming to earth for our sake, to live, die, and be raised again so we can live in him. And Jesus asked of us to journey with him. I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will travel with you. You heard me talk about my prayers lately. But I thank God for another day's journey. And I thank God for walking with me in that journey. Jesus wants us to journey with him. Journey in our family relationships. Journey with him in our friendships, in our work, in our neighborhoods. Journey with him in the broken world. It's getting ready to get really crazy. And everybody is trying to lure me into these discussions about the present administration and all the chaos. And I say, I ain't sitting down wasting my time talking with you about what's going on. You know? When we should have been talking, we didn't talk. Now, this man told us what he was going to do. Everything that's happening, he told us he was going to do it. Well, but I voted against him. Okay, you voted against him. But he's in office. And you better make your prayer, you better make your journey, you better make this process totally in God now. Because things are getting ready to get seriously crazy. You're all not at the point yet, but what if you get to the point of your Social Security and you ain't got none? Some of us are leaning real heavy right now. Some of us might have to come over to your house for a couple of meals if this man take this Social Security. You know? Huh? We all live together. We might have to. the grandsons and Marcus, they said, hey, here's $1,000. One gave $1,000, one gave $300. He said, we're going to buy us some cows. We're going to raise our own beef. And they all have already prepared the garden for planting because they said, we're going to have to eat some of that stuff. We have to kill our own beef. We have to eat some of that stuff because we ain't going to have the money to go buy it. You come over to my house and eat, huh? So the Holy Spirit works in us so we can grow into Jesus' image on the journey and so we can reach the journey's end, which is heaven. That's where we're trying to get to. There are no arrivals while we are here on earth. We're trying to get to the destination, really, and that's heaven. And I know I'm way past my time, but the cross was God's divine plan platform for justice on which his willing son was crucified. There Jesus' body was nailed, and his death appeased God, and our salvation was secured. Because the cross represents sacrifice and atonement. Who of us are willing to sacrifice? Love and forgiveness, redemption and hope, victory over sin and death, a symbol of faith, a Trinitarian event. That's what the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Okay. Any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, then go ahead. Somebody hit me with what he said. Because he was laughing, that's why I laughed. Oh, sure you can. Now you got it's a whole pack of wild dogs back up in the very back of that place. You got to contend with them. If they don't ever come down near the house or anything, they just back up there. Well, sure, but God is going to keep us. I am loyal and faithful to the Habakkuk, that the just shall live by their faith. If we continue faith in God, I don't care what this man does or anybody else does, we will make it. We might be bent over, we might be hungry, may not get to eat what we really want to eat, but we'll make it. We're going to make it. Okay, let's stand for prayer. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, that's right, Tony. You're right. Anyone did not have communion on this past first Sunday? No, it's this coming first Sunday. Who will not be here Sunday for communion? Okay, we got Chandra and Kevin, Tara. Hmm? Oh, okay, good. Okay. And on the night that he was betrayed, he took the bread and broke it and gave thanks and said, "Take, eat. It's often that you do this in remembrance of me." And then he took the cup when he had supped and said, "Drink ye all of it. But this is my body of the New Testament." May we pray. God, we love you. We thank you for all that you do for us. It is our prayer, dear God, that what we have done was pleasing in your sight. All we ask is that you be our very present help That you keep us only as you can keep us and teach us only as you can teach us. We thank for these who are here in person and those who are online, those who had a desire to come but for some reason did not. Now keep us as we prepare to go to our respective places. And until we have had a chance to meet again, may your grace be with us. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.